Hello Internet! My name is Sarah Martin and I am going to be presenting a complete strategic analysis of the AP Moeller Maersk Group for Dr. Uche's senior capstone management class at Texas University at Galveston. An overview of my presentation. First, I'm going to give a pretty brief history of Maersk as a company, as well as some information as to how the company is structured, because that will be important moving on, as well as an external analysis. This goes into analyzing the general environment, Porter's 5 forces and how they play a role in the industry, driving forces of change within the industry, a competitive analysis using a strategic group map of the shipping industry, and after all of that we will sum up our external analysis with some key factors of success for the shipping and logistics industry. After a thorough knowledge of the industry within that Maersk operates within, we will go into analyzing them as a company by themselves, and within that we will use the 7S framework, a modified version of it. We'll go over some key financial information as well as a SWOT analysis. And then after all of that, after a very complete understanding of both the shipping and logistics industry as well as Maersk as a company, I will give some recommendations that I think will help both the industry succeed and Maersk succeed within this industry. So, with that being said, let's get started. Company history of Maersk. It started as a family business with 2 employees. So in 1904, Captain Peter Maersk Moeller bought a steamship in Denmark called the SS Svendborg. He bought the steamship in the hopes that his son, Arnold Peter, aka AP Moeller, where the company gets its namesake, this was in hopes that they would have a family business and they would work father and son. And over a century later, Maersk is still operating in a very familial way, even though the company is the largest shipping entity in the entire world. Those values of family first never really left, and members of the Maersk family are still active participants and executives within the company, which I think is really neat and definitely unique. So for the company, expansion came very gradually with time at first as they got going. Within a decade of when they bought their first ship, they ended up investing in a shipyard and buying some more vessels, and with that change and expansion just came naturally. It wasn't until the 1980s when things really took a large leap, and that is when firms across the world really got into the merger and acquisition mindset, which I know Dr. Uche is so against. I learned something. So while some people and some strategists really shy away from the idea of merging and acquiring, it definitely has been profitable for Maersk. For the most part, they've acquired or bought, I think it's like over 40 brands, which is insane. I think most of them they still they have been successful. So that's pretty impressive. Next, we're going to break down the company because for most of its existence, the company was one giant conglomerate, and that changed completely in 2016 after a really rough financial go because of low crude oil prices and low freight rates for shipping. The company needed to sell off assets and split to best operate because they were not able to successfully operate as one giant company anymore, which is very common when companies acquire too much and diversify too much that isn't related necessarily. So that's what happens. The 2 entities are the transport and logistics business unit and the energy business unit. The energy business unit used to be much bigger, but they have sold off assets because they needed to balance their budget, which is understandable considering the financial times in the recent years. But the purpose of my paper and this presentation is focusing on the transport and logistics side of the company and how it operates and the industry that it operates within. So let's get started and analyze the shipping industry. So the whole point of the external analysis is to look at where a company is now in relative to other companies. And so this analysis includes a Pestel analysis, which analyzes many different parts of the environment that a company operates within, as well as Porter's 5 forces, the driving forces of change within an industry, a competitive analysis of major industry players using a strategic group map, as well as wrapping up all of those previously named analyses with some key factors of success within the shipping and logistics industry. So, general environmental analysis is comprised of 6 main parts. It's a modified Pestel analysis. These main parts are demographics, economics, political and legal factors, sociocultural impacts, technological, environmental forces, as well as global forces. And for the shipping industry, I determined that all of these had a high impact on the industry and a company's ability to be successful. We'll start with demographics. While instead of using a population, we will think of demographics and populations as cargo that needs to be shipped, and companies need to be diversified enough to handle many different types of cargo. That way they can best serve their customers' needs. That's why it has a high impact. From an economic standpoint, shipping is a global business and it affects economies all over the world, as well as economies all over the world affect the industry, which is why the economic segment has a high impact, because if economies are hurting all over the world, they're not going to import as much, which means shipping companies will not need to bring products to those ports, which means they're not making money, etc. So that's how economics plays a role. As far as the political and legal segments, these two are tricky because shipping has to answer to the entire world, and across the world, politics and legalities and levels of ethics and morality change, and how people do business changes, and companies must be able to adapt to that and still find ways to be successful, which is really difficult sometimes. As far as illegal stuff, the UN has governing bodies over shipping, but it's not enforced equally across the globe, and some countries are known for not enforcing them, and people can smuggle and traffic and all that stuff, and that is a big reason why these political and legal factors have a very high impact on the industry as a whole. Socioculturally also has a high impact because cultures change across the globe from country to country, and companies must find ways to adapt to that to remain relevant in all those markets. While shipping is very global, it also is local in that as companies move products to ports, they also are playing a part in local business and local governments, and they have to be able to adapt to those cultures and those practices to keep business there. As far as technology also has a high impact because companies must be able to keep up with technological advancements. This industry is constantly innovating, and if a company cannot remain relevant with its technologies, customers are going to bring their business to other companies that do have technology that they desire. And as far as the global impact, it's obviously high because shipping is a global business, and literally goods are transported across the world and back just because it's cheaper than doing things within countries. So globally, that has a huge effect on the industry. Next is Porter's 5 competitive forces. Those 5 forces are the threat of new entrants, the rivalry among competing firms, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers, and threat of substitute products. So for the shipping industry, I only had one that I labeled a strong force, and that was the bargaining power of suppliers. This is because only a couple companies in the entire world have the means to make a ship that would that Maersk or MSC or Hapag-Lloyd or any other big firm needs. I mean, ships nowadays can hold 20,000 containers, and most shipbuilding companies, there aren't very many of them. They don't have the capabilities to make such large ships, and with those large ships becomes heavier cranes and need for deeper and wider channels and terminals to operate these things. And so suppliers have a unique advantage in that companies need their products, but they can't do business without them. But only a few companies can actually make the products that a bunch of different companies in the industry need, and so they are a strong force. The moderate forces are the rivalry among competing firms, as well as the bargaining power of buyers. While competition in the industry is really steep, because of the record low freight rates, there's an excess supply of container space on vessels, and companies are hemorrhaging money left and right. Giant companies have been closing really suddenly, and because of that, companies are afraid, and so they are forming alliances to best utilize their resources and best fill up their giant ships to just save money and operate a little bit more efficiently, which is why competition among competing firms is high, but it also isn't because they're working together, if that makes sense. Some weak forces are the threat of new entrants and the threat of substitute products. For the entrants threat, it really isn't a threat at all, because there are companies that have been operating for over a century and have such deep infrastructure across the world that a brand new company cannot compete with in any aspect. Also, shipping is expensive. Building a ship is expensive, and people don't just go out one day and be like, I want to own a shipping company, because that is not a way to make money quickly. It's definitely a gradual thing that people do over lifetimes, like in the case of Maersk. Okay, so next we're going to look at the driving forces of change in the shipping and logistics industry. These are globalization, technology, service excellence, efficiency, sustainability, and risk management. The ones that I thought have a high impact are globalization, technology, service excellence, and efficiency. And the ones that are still important but have a lower impact are sustainability and risk management. I'm just going to hit a couple of key points, because I don't want to be redundant, but globalization is obviously a driving force of change in the industry. People are constantly moving more and more goods across the world, and that is what is propelling the industry forward. Sustainability is another important one, even though it has a low impact. I think that is where the future of a lot of companies is going. People care not just about cost anymore. They care about, are we hurting the planet, and how big is all of our collective impact, and what is it going to look like in 100 years? And because of that, customers are picky, and they are choosing companies that not only offer competitive prices, but are operating in a way that is being a good steward of the planet. And I think that trend is going to continue in the future and become more and more relevant with time. So next we'll look at the competitive analysis of firms using the strategic group map. And the variables for this, on the y-axis we have price and product quality. from low to high, and then on the x-axis we have degree of vertical integration from low to high. As you can see, Maersk is the giant green bubble in the top. That means that they are both offering high quality products and prices. They also have a very high degree of vertical integration, and their bubble is the biggest, meaning they are making the most money. So Maersk is in a good spot in comparison to other companies, but overall the industry has really been suffering in the past couple of years. And while it's looking better, companies are still reporting losses that are really, really of concern. So now that we have a really good understanding of the external environment of the shipping industry, I have some key factors of success that I have inferred from all of this analysis. The first one is the need for high levels of intermodalism. This means that companies need to be able to adhere to transporting goods via multiple channels, and how important that is, because it saves money, it saves time, and it increases efficiency. On the next slide I have an example that I'll show after I talk about the other two. The next one is the rapid on-time movement of cargo. Customers want their goods to get to their destinations as fast as possible and on time. Because if they're not on time, then they lose money, especially in supply chain stuff when moving like parts and commodities that aren't fully ready to sell. They need to get to where they're going because they have many more destinations on the way. And so companies have to be able to get goods where they're supposed to go on time, on schedule. And if they can do that, then they're going to maintain customer loyalty. The last one, the last key factor of success in the industry is geographic reach. Companies need to be able to transport globally. Regional companies are not the future. While it's great if you have a really strong channel in one area, you can make so much more money and if you focus on, I can do this all over the world. And at first, companies who are regional can consider entering into alliances with other regional companies and seeing how that can work for both companies. So here is the intermodalism example. It shows how goods go from a shipping premises onto a truck, onto a terminal, onto an export terminal, onto a vessel, onto another vessel, into a different port, onto a different truck to get to where they're going. And usually it's much more complicated than that. It also often involves rail and air freight and so many other ways of getting goods where they need to go the fastest and the most cost effectively. So now that we have a good grasp on the external environment of the shipping industry, we can look at Maersk as a company and what they're doing and where Maersk wants to go, and if their structure and strengths and financials coincide and can work together to get those goals. So first we'll look at the 7S framework. This framework is really helpful when looking at a company's organization as a whole. Sorry, I had a hiccup. So the 7 S's are strategy, structure, systems, skills, staff, style, and shared values. The three tangible ones are strategy, structure, and systems. This is stuff that companies can implement that are tangible. You can touch them. They're actual things. And the soft ones are skills, staff, style, and values. These are intangible, but they are just as important because without the soft S's, you can't accomplish the hard ones. So now we're going to look at some of the key elements of this framework. We're not going to talk about them all because there's just not enough time. So first is corporate mission, which goes around, goes in with style and shared values. This one, Maersk has a very simple corporate mission, but it definitely trickles down to every aspect of their business, and that is to enable and facilitate global supply chains and provide opportunities to trade globally. And they really do work as hard as they can across their entire business model to accomplish those goals. And the next one I'm going to talk about is going to deal with how they actually accomplish their mission with their different brands. So products and services, this deals with what a company offers and why it's relevant, and if these services and products fit the mission, and I believe that they do. So Maersk shipping and transport segment is broken into 5 different entities. That is Maersk Line, which is the container shipping industry, which is the company's most profitable part by a huge margin. Damco, which deals with freight forwarding via truck, as well as other supply chain management services inland, which is also important. APM Terminals, which deals with the land side infrastructure to get containers off of ships, as well as store them further inland and deal with other kind of structural stuff that is key to intermodalism. Next is MCI, that is Maersk Container Industry. This one is more on the side of technological advancement with actual containers, which is dealing with like refrigeration, temperature control, security, scanning, all of that stuff. Maersk is leading the way in the industry to make containers better to best deliver cargo. And then Svitzer, which is actually older than Maersk, but Maersk acquired them. Svitzer has been leading the globe in towage and emergency response for a couple hundred years. They really are killing the game. Even though they're the smallest segment of Maersk's shipping entity, they definitely play an important role. And the figure just shows how they work all together in a channel and a port to get goods where they need to go. So another one that's important to mention is the organizational culture of Maersk. Maersk has 5 pretty simple core values that they enact in all of their business practices. They are constant care, humbleness, uprightness, focus on employees, and their brand name. And that can be seen really in everything that they do. So next we have some key financial information. I'm sorry if you can't read the chart. It is what it is. So like I said, in the past couple of years, the company has definitely experienced some difficult financial troubles, but they are not alone in that. That's been an industry-wide trend. Since from 2016 to 2017, since they changed their strategy and changed their business model, things have been getting a little bit better. Some examples of that: revenue increased from 2016 to 2017, a 13% increase, as well as profits. They increased by 162%, which is pretty great. And they're still reporting a loss, but it's not as significant. And this just shows that they're getting better. Things are picking up. Another important one is return on investment. They went from 0.5% to 1.6%, which is a really good step in the right direction, showing investors that every dollar they invest, that Maersk uses to invest in capital, will bring them back $1.60 to the shareholder, which is good. So next we'll look at our SWOT analysis, which goes over the company's internal strengths and weaknesses, what the company is doing right, what they're doing wrong, as well as external opportunities for the company to succeed and threats that could get in the way of success. So the strengths are diversification of services. Maersk, like I've said before, they offer a diverse number of services that are all related, so it works. So companies don't have to use third-party companies to get their goods where they need to go. They can rely on Maersk throughout, which is really a plus. Global reach, they're everywhere. Maersk has prided itself that if you pick a point on the globe, they will get goods there no matter what it is. They are committed to that. Culture, like I said, their company culture is unique, and it really does reach across all of their businesses, which is the big strength. And also, they have very high brand recognition and reputation because they've been around for so long, and they are dedicated to constantly making themselves better to better serve their customers and their shareholders. Some weaknesses, decreased revenues. The company is not making enough money right now, as well as the structure changes have been complicated and are confusing for shareholders because they're still not making any money, and it's disappointing. Some opportunities, Maersk can continue to align strategically with other companies. They are doing that right now, but there is also room for more of that to better operate in a more efficient way. They also are leading by example. This company is so big and is so often a first mover, and because of that, they can lead by example and lead the industry in the right way towards sustainability and good stewardship of the planet. And then some threats. Market depression. The market is still just not where it needs to be, which is affecting business across the board. As well as international security and environmental regulations, which increase fear and cost of business. And also imitable products and services. So many companies are doing the same thing, just at varying prices and varying efficiencies, and because of that, it's easy to imitate. So now we've looked at all of this analysis, I have some recommendations. And externally, my number one recommendation is for companies to focus on what makes them money and to stop diversifying when it is not related to what makes them money. They need to focus on maximizing shareholder value in the midst of these hard times and kind of softening the blow of all of these losses by just focusing on what they can do to continue to boost growth. Another one, external recommendation, is to pump the brakes on the economies of scale. There is no need for ships that can hold over 20,000 containers right now in the industry. There are not enough products right now that that companies need to have such big ships. They're so costly and are not efficient. My internal recommendations for the company, for Maersk, the first one is to wait and see. They just underwent a major strategy and structural change less than 2 years ago. And so I would recommend, instead of continuing to try to do all of these things and to try to tweak this new strategy, it's just let it play out next couple of years and see if it will continue to work. And then my second one is to stabilize finances. So that means that they need to focus on really just making their financial reports look better and focus more on, what am I looking to say? More on how they can best serve their shareholders. So thank you so much. That's all I got. Thanks and gig 'em.